Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning is on organizations that work to help make a difference in the lives of people every day. The American Civil Liberties Union of Wisconsin, commonly referred to as the ACLU, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan private organization that's dedicated to defending the civil liberties and civil rights of all Wisconsin residents. And here to tell us more about it is the executive director of the ACLU of Wisconsin, Chris Ahmuty. How are you?
Good morning, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. In Wisconsin, the ACLU has some 7,000 members. Tell us more about the organization and what it is you do.
You bet. Since 1930, the ACLU in Wisconsin has been trying to defend civil liberties and civil rights, as you've mentioned in your introduction. And what that means is the staff, the volunteers, the members of the ACLU every day try to make life better for people in the community by making sure that they can live their lives with freedom. Freedom, you know, what's more American than that? But sometimes it's hard to come by. So we try to make sure that families, individuals, groups can exercise the rights that are given to them by the Constitution of the United States and the law. And some of the freedoms that we're talking about that we try to defend are free speech, religious liberty, the right to a fair trial, the things that you think of from the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
And the ACLU, you know, can't take up every situation, but we get into situations more often than not where it's the government that's abusing somebody's rights. So we get involved as sort of a safeguard against government abuse. And as a result, sometimes we defend people who are powerless or controversial, people who can't get satisfaction at City Hall by themselves, and they need somebody to help them.
It's like the giant stepping in to help.
Well, we like to, you know, make people think that we're, you know, very powerful and a giant, but really, you know, we run our operation on a shoestring. And here in Wisconsin, we've got a small staff and just actually 2 lawyers on staff, but we get an amazing amount of done. And that's because there's, unfortunately, lots of situations that need to be taken care of, and people who are harmed by this. You know, a good example that I'd like to mention is the situation of the children from Milwaukee who have gotten in trouble with the law and now have been sent 3.5 hours north of here to the juvenile facilities at Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake. And we know that there's serious problems with those facilities, but, you know, regardless of what the children have done, part of their sentence shouldn't be a sentence to suffer inadequate medical care or deprivation and lack of attention. So I think that when people recognize that the government is so powerful and it can have such an impact on the lives of people, the community comes together, and lots of people have spoken out about Lincoln Hills, and I think the question now is what can be done. And the ACLU has a number of tools that we use, including litigation. We'll take the government to court when they violate people's rights. Or sometimes we work with the legislators or the Common Council members to change the laws. And other times it's a matter of educating the community about civil liberties and how important they are and how they can improve everybody's lives if we respect one another's rights and civil liberties.
Yeah, and the ACLU, with all that you've said, does not receive any government funding, so therefore there's no red tape or stepping on toes. You really are there to do your job.
Right. The only time that we receive government funding is when some government bureaucrat violates the law, violates somebody's constitutional rights, and we have to sue. And in the course of suing, we ask the government to pay our attorney's fees. In a recent case, Planned Parenthood versus Walker, all the attorneys in that case are asking for $1.8 million from the state of Wisconsin. So the state legislators, the governor, because they violated the law, they're costing the taxpayers of Wisconsin up to $1.8 million in this one case alone. You know, it seems like bureaucrats are willing to spend everybody else's money, the taxpayers' money, and so they don't really think about the consequences of violating the law, and they should.
Yeah, good point. And you've been the executive director since 1992.
That's
so
right. I've been at this for a while.
You've seen quite a few issues come across your desk, that's for sure. And there are key issues that you focus on. You've mentioned a few of those that are very relevant to what's important to individuals and groups of people on so many different levels. Of course, we've got the November elections that are right around the corner.
Right.
So voter rights and voter suppression are two issues that are at the top of the list for you. So a federal trial and this voter ID thing goes back and forth, back and forth. And for some people, it's hard to keep up with where we are. So I'll have you fill us in. A federal trial recently ruled that voters who don't have IDs in Wisconsin would be able to sign an affidavit. Well, since that ruling, things have changed. Fill us in.
Right. And who knows, maybe they'll change again by the time we're broadcast. It could change many times, or maybe not many times, but it could change again before the November 8th election. So remember, November 8th is the general election, including president and senator and Congress and lots of other positions at the state level. So it's a very important election, and people should try to make sure that they stay on top of what they need to vote, how they can register to vote. And as of now, they may need to have a photo ID to present when they vote on election day. And we've done that a couple times now. And so there's a limited number of IDs that are possible. You can go on the State Elections Commission website or the ACLU website and find out what those are. So the big thing for people to do now is keep checking to see what you're going to need. And the ACLU would say that you really shouldn't have to have a photo ID in order to vote, because it makes it difficult for some people to vote, and we don't want to take away the right to vote, the precious right to vote for anybody.
Right.
The rationale for having people present a photo ID, it really is bogus. They're saying that there's voter fraud, and sometimes you even hear, well, it's those people who are committing voter fraud. And it's without basis. We keep asking the state to demonstrate when is there voter fraud that would be solved by having a voter ID, and they can't. We've asked them over and over again. The times when there's impersonation fraud, where somebody goes in and says there's somebody else, very, very, very rare. You know, and so the whole notion of having a photo ID, it's really more about suppressing the vote of some people rather than opening up the franchise and really allowing people to participate in democracy.
Yes, and I don't want us to run out of time, so I do want to talk about some key things that have taken place here in the city. Most recently, the ACLU of Wisconsin held a press conference with the Milwaukee chapter, NAACP, and about a dozen other organizations to discuss the violence against and by police. And that's not just a concern here in Milwaukee, of course, it's a concern all over the nation. Tell us more about this call for police reform and how all of you came together to try to change how things are done.
Obviously, the issue of violence by the police and violence against the police has been ongoing, but I think that the situations in Baton Rouge and Dallas and in the suburb of St. Paul, where we had police killing of a gentleman, sort of brought it to a head. And so the NAACP Milwaukee branch called a number of us together, and we put our heads together and say, what can we do to advance the dialogue? We don't want to be blaming people and finger pointing, but what can we do to really advance the dialogue? And this comes at a time when the Milwaukee Common Council has been holding special meetings on the criminal justice system, and they've talked to the sheriff and the police chief and the mayor and the DA, but they really haven't talked to the community, to citizens. So what the group that the NAACP assembled came up with was a letter, and we sent it to the Common Council, but we sent it to the mayor and the police chief as well, outlining a number of short-term steps that can be taken to build trust. It's really a trust-building measure.
Absolutely.
So things like giving the public more say when it comes to the Common Council's deliberations on policing. Why not hold a hearing where they invite the public to give their input onto this? We're the ones who are affected by policing, and it's good police-community relations that we all want. Or some other things that are kind of technical, but we think would be good tests of trust. For instance, the Milwaukee Police Department makes about 200,000 officer-initiated stops, or up to 200,000 officer-initiated stops every year, pedestrians, traffic stops. And the basis for those stops really isn't law enforcement or even traffic safety.
It's where the most crime happens.
They're trying to establish a presence. But the trouble is, by using so many stops to establish a presence, by having in effect a stop and frisk policy, they're catching a lot of innocent people in this web. And maybe after you get stopped once, that's okay, I can put up with that. But they've been doing this for several years now, and so people are just getting sick and tired of continually being stopped or having their young men stopped, that sort of thing. So we want them to evaluate that policy in line with the recommendations from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing to make sure that there's no collateral damage from this policy that may undermine community trust and legitimacy. And so the groups came together and put forward those and some other trust-building measures, and we hope that the Common Council and the mayor and the chief and the Fire and Police Commission all respond and enter into a dialogue, a real dialogue with the community.
Yes, and we'll keep our eye on that for sure. And other issues that the ACLU focus on include immigration rights, LGBT rights, and reproductive freedom.
Right.
A long list of things that, like I said early on, are very important to a lot of people. We're down to about a minute. I did want to mention that you have student alliances around the state, as well as a partnership with MPS and Milwaukee Public Theater. So an array of things that you do to help make a difference in the lives of people every day. And we've run out of time so quickly. We'll have to have you back to talk about
That'd be great.
A lot of the different things that continue to happen. So feel free to always use this as a platform.
It'll be a pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate you being here. Chris Ahmuty is the executive director of the ACLU of Wisconsin. For more information on the ACLU or anything that we've discussed, you can log on to aclu-wi.org or call 414-272-4032. And when we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll discuss a local organization that's mission is to empower Milwaukee County residents with resources to move beyond poverty. We'll find out more about the Social Development Commission right after this.